Hey, how you doing? Have I inadvertently become a member of a cult? I worry sometimes that I might have. You've got to admit, it isn't a completely unfounded worry. I'm certainly not the first person to talk about jiu-jitsu in terms of it being a cult. Not by a long shot. The world is full of people who used to do all sorts of different martial arts and then, after starting BJJ, drop them and start evangelizing about the one true path. Let's look at the actual evidence. Let's see if Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really is a cult. The first thing we need to do is define our terminology. We can't make a reasoned decision about whether BJJ is a cult unless we've actually defined exactly what a cult is. And this is where it starts to get tricky. Pretty much all of the dictionary definitions I've found refer to cults as being religious or quasi-religious organisations, and whether BJJ is a religion is a whole new can of worms I'm not going to open right now. And so instead of literary definitions, I figured I'd look at legal definitions. It turns out there isn't a single accepted legal definition of what a cult actually is. HG.org, one of the oldest legal information sites on the internet, says this about the definition of a cult. Generally, a cult is considered to be a group of individuals with some common religious or metaphysical philosophical ideology. Generally, this belief system is considered to be outside of mainstream religions or in some way radicalized. That's not hugely helpful either. So I guess we have to look at Wikipedia. That says, in modern English, cult is a term considered pejorative by some for a social group that is defined by its unusual religious, spiritual, or philosophical beliefs and rituals, or its common interest in a particular personality, object, or goal. There's definitely a clear implication that a cult is a negative thing, that the interest or focus in the leaders or practices of the cult are damaging to the people trapped within it. So, combining all of those, we're left with our working definition being a social group defined by its beliefs and rituals that has a common interest in a particular personality or goal to the detriment of the members of that cult. I'm pretty happy with that as a core definition, but there are other aspects of cults that aren't strictly necessary, but are commonly accepted, like having a strict hierarchy of members. There are those who have the secret knowledge and those who receive the secret knowledge. Members have ways of recognising and knowing each other, whether that's the types of clothes they wear, the language they use, or even special signs or gestures. It's probably also fair to say that cult members are supposed to give all they have to the cult itself: time, money, their focus. So, assuming these are the criteria we're going to use, does BJJ really sit alongside Heaven's Gate, the Unification Church, or the Branch Davidians? The obvious answer is no. But when you look at it a little more closely, it's not quite that simple. There's definitely a single family at the top of the definitely not a cult of BJJ, a family who hold the secret wisdom, which trickles down to the more junior members. There's a clear uniform that demonstrates exactly where you sit in the global hierarchy. There's a special language the members use, and there are even ways of greeting each other. Established members of the probably not a cult have a clear us versus them attitude when it comes to other martial arts and fighting systems. They see themselves as being distinctly different, and there's no doubt in any of their minds that BJJ, what they do, really is significantly superior. On top of that, there's a clear culture of evangelism. Everywhere you go in the world of combat sports, someone will be singing the praises of BJJ and encouraging new people to come along. I've done it myself on this very channel. As if that wasn't enough, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is expensive, at least in terms of other martial arts. People on the inside say it's worth every penny, and that instructors of other arts are undervaluing themselves. Or perhaps they just aren't good enough to make a decent wage from it. Once you're in, you're encouraged to partake more and more. 1 session a week? Not good enough. 2 sessions? Barely. 3 sessions? That's about the minimum if you want to progress. Come along to our large communal building where we meet up to follow our rituals, see the pictures of our great leaders on the walls, and learn the secret techniques they've passed down to us, the chosen few. Members of the, quite possibly a cult, soon learn that if you study enough, if you dedicate enough of your time and money to BJJ and put aside your own thoughts of what you should do well enough, you'll be gifted with a higher rank. All your fellow members will be there and you'll be applauded. When potential new members come along, they'll be given special treatment. They'll be shown some of the secrets. They'll be told in no uncertain terms exactly how far from the truth they currently are. They'll likely be told that with the right commitment, the right discipline, they can change their life for the better and become part of a global brotherhood, or sisterhood, of people who will welcome them with open arms, but tucked elbows. At the end of the session, almost everyone will thank them for coming and do whatever they can to persuade them to join, to become one of them. When you put it like that, it definitely sounds quite a lot like a cult. But is it? Really? I still think no. There are huge benefits to training in BJJ. It can literally change people's lives. If you aren't familiar with Kenny Kim's Matt Made show, then I strongly recommend you check it out. I'll stick the obligatory links in the description. Jiu-jitsu helps people build confidence, improve their fitness, and inevitably create some amazingly strong friendships. Yes, you'll have to wear weird pajamas, and yes, you'll get strangled repeatedly by your mates, but in almost every way, decent jiu-jitsu is uplifting. It's a force for good, and that's not true of cults. Like a lot of martial arts, it does tend to attract people who've never really fitted in some way or another. It provides them a home. It gives them something to focus their passion on. And like I said in my last video, it really does make good on the promises that almost every other martial art fails to. The reason that most BJJ folk think BJJ is a better fighting system than pretty much all of the others is that, with one or two notable exceptions, it actually is. And so I really am quite happy to say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu may have some superficial features of a cult, but a cult it is not. However, some schools make that a really difficult thing to say. When you look at the somewhat disproportionate respect that black belts tend to be shown, and you look at how some of them react to that, cultish is probably pretty accurate. We all know of schools where there's one and only one accepted uniform that you can only buy from within the school. We've all heard of schools where students are banned from training with anyone other than their professor, to the point where all training shuts down when their glorious leader is away. And even worse, we've all heard the stories about instructors taking advantage of their students, either financially or sexually. So I guess the fair answer is that BJJ does have some cult-like aspects, but probably, in the main, isn't actually a cult. But some clubs definitely are. And so I guess it's only fair to round this off with a word of caution. One of the things that gets talked about a lot from the very beginning of your journey into BJJ is the idea of getting comfortable in very uncomfortable positions. And while we're talking about physical comfort, I can't stress how important that is if you want to progress. But emotional discomfort should be a big red flag. There are a few others I'm going to mention while I'm at it. If you feel pressured to commit more money than you can afford, if individual members are being disparaged or insulted in front of others by the instructor, if members of the group cover up or try to make light of inappropriate things senior grades have done, if any of these are the case, or you just don't feel comfortable and can't quite put your finger on why, maybe you should be thinking of finding a new club. Anyway, over to you. What are your thoughts? Do you think BJJ is a cult? I'm genuinely interested to hear what you think. Stick something in the comments and I'll do my very best to answer. Before I go, I want to give you a quick update on the channel. You may have noticed that I've finally given in to all of the nagging messages from YouTube and I've enabled memberships. I've resisted until now because I couldn't think of anything I could give in return that would make me feel that it was a fair exchange. But recently, I found a series of video lessons I made in 2015 for a course called Hit Like a Freight Train. I've had a watch, And other than the fact that I had a whole lot less grey hair and a disturbingly grubby pair of trainers, I'm still pretty happy with what it shows. And so I've uploaded these videos for members to see. My goal is to upload tutorials there looking at classical pugilism and catch wrestling. I'm not going to promise a time frame or schedule, as we all know I'm unlikely to stick to it. But if you fancy supporting me and helping me to grow the channel to the point where I can finally stop losing money on it, and you'd like something in return, that would be amazing. And so, to those of you still here at the very end, fight team.